All right, welcome to Subtracting Mixed Numbers, and in this episode, I'm going to show you how to borrow or regroup when you're subtracting. Just like when you have whole numbers, let's say if I were going to do 32 minus 16, okay? And we start over here in the ones place. If you have 2, you can't take away 6. So you'd have to borrow, this would become 2, this will become 12, and then you can keep going, and then you can do your subtraction, right? So we're going to be doing this kind of work with fractions today. And it's a little bit different. It's a little bit tricky. There's just one real key important piece that I'll make sure to mention as we go and really get it stuck in your head so that you remember it. Okay, so when we subtract mixed numbers, okay, we have to make sure that we have the same number in the denominator. And I'm just going to give you a problem with the same number in the denominator already. So 7 3/8, and we're going to be subtracting 3 7/8. So just like when it's whole numbers, you always start with the ones place and then move your way to the tens and hundreds. Here, we're going to start with the fractions, and then we'll work our way over to the whole numbers, and that's really important, okay? So as you can see, I have 8 in the denominator, so I'm ready to subtract, okay? I don't have to adjust these at all. But here I have 3, and I need to take away 7. If you have 3 of something, you can't give away 7, you only have 3. So what we have to do is we have to borrow or regroup, and here's how it works, okay? I'm going to borrow from my whole number, okay? So that 7 is now going to be a 6. And when I borrow here, regroup, in whole numbers, you just automatically add 10. Here, you add whatever the number is in the denominator, okay? And that's really important. It always has to be that number in the denominator. So when I borrow here, my 7 became a 6, and I'm going to add 8 to the 3 that I already have. Okay, so that number in the denominator, we add it to the number in the numerator. So this 3 now is 11. And I know a big question I get all the time in class, like hands go up immediately, that's an improper fraction, and I hear it all the time, and we need it to be improper because we need that to be able to subtract, okay? And you'll see how it goes. Now, we have 11, and we're taking away 7, so our new fraction is 4/8, okay? And now, we just need to do our whole number, so we borrowed from the 7, it became a 6. 6 minus 3 is 3, and then again, remember, you always want to put your fraction in simplest form. So this would become 3 1/2, just like that. Okay. So I'm going to do this a couple more times so you can really see it, and really working on that borrowing. Just remember, whatever the number is in the denominator, you just take that and you add it to what was in the numerator already. All right. So I'm going to do another simple one, and then I'll put it all together so you can see all the steps you could possibly have to do. So I'm going to go 5 1/4, and we're going to subtract 2 3/4. Okay, so again, I already have the same denominator, so I don't need to change anything, but I only have 1 here, and I need to subtract 3. Okay, so here to borrow, okay, our whole number, we're going to borrow 1 from there. The number in the denominator, we're going to add it to the top. So there's 4, I'm going to add it up here, and this is going to become 5/4, right? A really simple model I can show you. So I'm going to draw what we had to start with. We had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then we had we only had 1/4. So we had 5 wholes and we had 1/4 down here. That's what we started with. And when we borrow, we're just taking this whole right here and we're just making it into 4/4 like that. That's all we're doing. And here you have your 4 wholes and then your 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 fourths. So that's just a picture of what you're doing when you're borrowing with fractions. Okay, so here's my new fraction, 4 and 5/4. That's what it would look like in the picture form. Okay, and we're gonna subtract this amount. So if I have 5 and I take away 3, that leaves me with 2/4. I'll do that over here too. So I'm gonna take away 1/4, 2/4, 3/4. So there's my, this is gone now. So there's my 2/4 right there, okay? And then my whole numbers, I now have 4 here, and I'm getting rid of 2 of them. So if I get rid of those 2, 4 minus 2 is 2. There's my 2 and 2/4. This is also the same as 2 and 1/2, okay? So the models are a little tricky. You got to really understand it to be able to do the models, okay? But it's a good visual representation of what you're doing. So I'm gonna just show you one more time what you're doing when you borrow. So if I started with, let's say I have 3 3/8. Say I have 3 3/8, okay? Here's my model. Here's 1 hole, here's 2 holes, here's 3 holes, okay? So you have all of this, and that represents this 3 here, okay? And then we only have, in our fraction, we have 3/8, okay? So I'm gonna cut this into eighths, and we have 3 here. So 1, 2, 3. There's my 3 3/8, right? So now let's subtract 1 and, let's go 1 7/8, okay? I'm gonna take away 1 7/8. I only have 3/8 here to start with. I can't take away 7. I can't do it, right? So what we do, we're taking one of these 3, okay? And we're gonna cut it or divide it into eighths again. And we have all of this still. Instead of looking at it as 1 whole, we're looking at it as 8/8. So when we add these together, again, you take the denominator and add it to the top. So 8 plus 3 is again 11/8. Now we can subtract. So let's get rid of 7/8. So there goes 3 of them. And then we can get rid of 4, 5, 6, 7. So in our model right here, we're left with 4/8. Here, 11 minus 7, there's that 4/8. And then we have 2 holes left. We need to get rid of one of them. So if I get rid of this, okay, there I'm left with my 1 4/8, which again is the same as 1 1/2. We would divide both of these by 4 to put our fraction in simplest form, okay? So that's how you subtract mixed numbers when you have to borrow, okay? I'm gonna do one problem here and it'll be all the steps we've talked about so far in these videos, where we might have to change our fractions and subtract and borrow and do it all together. So this is what everything would look like put together. Let's go 5 2/5. And I'm going to subtract 3.5. 3.5, okay? So putting it all together, I don't have the same number in my denominator, so I need to change these fractions so I have the same denominator. So 3.5, if I multiply this fraction by 5, that'll give me 3 5/10. Okay? And up here, I'm going to multiply by 2, and that gives me 5 4/10. So step 1 is done. I got my denominators to be the same number. Okay? Now I'm ready to subtract. When I look at my fractions first, I see 4, and I'm trying to take away 5, which I can't do. So here's my borrowing again. I'm going to cross off my whole number 5. That's going to become 4. My denominator 10, I'm going to take that and add it to the top. So 10 plus my 4 now gives me 14/10. Okay? Remember, whatever's in the denominator, that's what you add to the numerator, okay? Don't do 10 every time like whole numbers. You got to see what's in your denominator. So I borrow. Now I can subtract. 14 minus 5 is 9/10. My whole numbers, 4 minus 3 is 1. That's already in simplest form, so I have 1 9/10. And that is how you subtract mixed numbers with borrowing. Hope you learned something. Feel free to watch this video over and over and over. If it takes you more than once to get it, this is a difficult concept, and it's tough to not be able to interact with the teacher while you're trying to learn this. So you might need to watch it more than once and, ask your parents for help. Okay. All right. Have a good one.